The artists that look like they've got it under control completely, those are the artists who have considered the client experience. I think that that's really important. It's important in my industry, but if you're selling a painting, yes, you want to be authentic in the creation process. And yes, you want to be authentic in sharing how the painting itself is important to you. Because when you share, collectors connect with that, whether it's that one piece, that one story, or you as an artist and your story. People love to connect. And so when you're selling original art, I feel like you have to bear all. You have to invite your audience on that journey with you.
Welcome to the Creative Endeavour podcast. This is the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's real conversations with real artists. And I'm Andrew Tischler. What an absolute joy and pleasure to have your company here on the podcast once again. In this episode, I'm talking to Stephanie Gaffney, an extraordinary artist who's carved out a thriving niche as a live wedding painter. Her journey is a bold mix of creativity, business smarts, and serious self-belief. We talk about what it takes to put yourself out there, build a business around your art, and still show up with generosity and openness. If you're an artist trying to figure out how to turn your passion into a sustainable career, this conversation has got so many gold nuggets in here for you. I really hope you enjoy. Before we get stuck into it, just a quick word from our sponsor, me. That's right, I'm sponsoring this episode. Now let me guess, you're pouring hours into your art, you're serious about making your work, but you're stuck. Stuck on how to grow, how to get seen, how to actually sell your work without feeling like a sellout. Look, I've been there, and this is exactly why I've created Tisch Academy. It's an online art school built by an artist for artists who are ready to take themselves to the next level. Inside, you'll find full-length tutorials, business trainings, and real-world strategies that actually move the needle. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, so that's you listening right now, you'll find the exclusive video version on Tisch Academy, but over 350 hours of video content, including painting tutorials, critique videos, and my art business course called the Creative Activator. So if you're ready to stop guessing and to start building something real, head over to Tisch Academy and let's get to work. You'll find it at tisch.academy, and that link is in the description down below. In this episode, I'm talking to Stephanie Gaffney. Here she is in the Creative Endeavour. Stephanie Gaffney, welcome to the Creative Endeavour podcast. What an absolute pleasure to have you here.
It is an honor to be here. Thank you, Andrew.
I'm really buzzed about this, and I'm seeing this more and more these days, is this entrepreneurial streak that's coming through so many artists working today, and how they're able to monetize their work, turn it into a business, because ultimately that seems to be a huge challenge. We're so caught up in these old tropes of what it's meant to be, an artist, struggling and toiling away in the studio. But anytime you find a genuine connection with your key audience and you're able to form a business around that, I love that. So you are a live wedding painter. This is something that I find insanely cool. I have a really well, he's an old friend of mine, but I haven't been in touch with him for a long while. But his name's Shaky, Jacob Butler over there in Perth in Western Australia, and he of course does this, and I just find it so cool. Talk about a pressure gig. What's that like, and how the heck did you get into this?
Well, it's quite the job, as you can imagine, and it is a pressure. It's a pressure cooker. I mean, you're asked to go through the most vulnerable process of creating work, from a blank canvas, all the decision makings involved, and and then go through the kind of ugly part of the painting in front of people, with just kind of feeling the weight of their judging eyes and their questions, and just feeling that as you're creating is it's something to experience and something to kind of get over and take control of and get on top of, and then create something that's beautiful, memorable, and then try to wrap it up and be finished in a very short amount of time. And so kind of the only way that I like to do that is to, well, let's see. I kind of went on a tangent there. And really the most important part of it is that it's a service-based business. So
Yeah.
I was asked, I started my, I guess, creative journey with putting my clients' passions, what they're interested in, what's important to them, front and center.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
I like to paint. I'm from New Orleans. There's a lot of culture down here. There's a lot of cultural elements in the landscape and the people and the wildlife that people are very passionate about, and they like to have that represented in their homes.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of artists down here. It's a very saturated area in terms of artists trying to create, a style or
Hmm.
a recognizable body of work. And so I wasn't trying to compete with the artists in the area. What I was trying to do was make connections with people and
Hmm.
then basically create custom artwork for them.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
It was such an interesting way to ask that question, because what I do is based on trying to serve people where they're at. And when
Awesome.
a couple is getting married, when a couple is engaged and they're planning their wedding and they're trying to be unique and they're trying to tie unique and personalized elements into their wedding, having a painting created there on site, not only is it entertainment for the guests, but it allows them to have a memory created in a one of a kind way that they can hang on the wall in their home. So it's a keepsake. It's something that I don't think another vendor, yeah, like you don't take anything else home. Maybe you
Mm.
take some pictures, you have those printed and framed, but the painting is like the one physical thing that you take home, aside from your spouse, of course. But that's the one physical thing that you take home and hang on
Right.
the wall. And it's like that
Right.
memory. And then if you have, depending on the artist's style, you have like recognizable likeness in the portraits. And so if you choose to include family members, then it's a really memorable keepsake of that day.
It's
So
it's a beautiful, and the way you captured. I mean, to think about. So I'm a slow painter, right? Like
mm,
I force myself into pressure gigs of sorts, particularly like live demos and workshops and the like. So recently I did a tour here down in the South Island of New Zealand, and while I'm doing these demonstrations for my students, I realized far out I need to paint live more because I'm really
mm.
slow. But I'm going to pull up this image here, and for the people watching the video version of the podcast on Titch Academy, they're going to see what I'm about to share with you on my screen. But I want to ask you about this in particular, and so when we're looking at a painting like this, what's 36 by 48? Get out of town! Like this is so you're nearly at a square meter, right? For those playing the
Yeah.
metric game, you're nearly at a square meter. And this thing has got so much going on. How much time do you have to create this? Because presumably you have to have bride and groom there on location, and then you're painting this live. So you like
Yeah.
how do run me through? How do you set up and what's that process look like? And wherever you want to jump into that, but this painting, I mean, Stephanie, good night. Look at this. This has got wow, and so you're literally wow. Okay, so I'm just going through the carousel now. Like we saw your initial imprimatura. So you started with the background first, and then you're superimposing your bride and groom over the top. But run me through. How does this work?
Oh, absolutely. So, of course, this process begins months before the wedding even happens. The client,
Okay.
because it's basically a commission.
Hmm.
The client gets to request what moment they want to have painted, whether they want it to be more of a portrait style painting, focusing on the two of them, or if they want to include family members,
Hmm.
include the dogs, include grandma who passed away 5 years ago. And so
Mm.
we kind of we we curate a vision for what they want their painting to look and feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions I'll ask is like, what emotion do you want to feel when you look back at the painting when it's
Oh,
done? Do
wow.
you want to feel joy and movement and like you're at a party? Do you want it to be more romantic? What styles do you like? This bride in particular, she was styling her ceremony after like the Bridgerton garden party, very floral, very soft, very Regency era. And so I went into the job knowing the tonal range of the painting, knowing that she wanted a romantic garden party kind of feeling, and she wanted the ceremony exit. Okay, so the plan was I allowed myself 10 hours to create the painting, and 36 by 48 is a big painting.
It's
Usually
a
the
monster.
average, like people offer like 24 by 30, 24 by 36 inches. Some artists offer like start smaller than that. Some artists go a little larger. 30 by 40 is standard big. 36 by 48 was very big. And then I've painted larger. I've painted 48 by 60, which is 4 feet by 5 feet. So that's, it takes a little bit of planning. And then I understand I've been doing this for 10 years now. And so I know how to pace myself. I know there are tricks that you can use to speed up the process. Anyway, it's a lot about decision making on the day. So I had 10 hours budgeted for this event, knowing that the reception lasts 4 hours. There's a cocktail party. The ceremony lasts about 30 minutes. I was planning on getting there 2 hours before. That gave me 10 hours. And then it started raining. And so I had about an hour and a half to get the background in. I'm sure in the photos you could see there was another woman painting on what looked to be kind of a roughed out sketch underpainting, and that was the groom's mother. And she shared an interest in art, and that's another beautiful part about the job, is that you're able to interact with guests, and the experience can be interactive. I can hand off the brush, let them put a little paint on the canvas, and then if it's not right, then I can fix it. Like that's
Well, they
never a
contributed, right?
concern for me.
Yeah.
They contribute, and then if
Yeah.
it works, like if they place a brush stroke and I'm like, that's
There you
perfect,
go.
I'm leaving that there, then they can see it
Beautiful.
when the painting's done. I'll leave
Yeah.
it. But in this instance, this painting I actually had, I think it was limited to 7 or 7.5 hours due to weather, due to relocating. The bride actually didn't the bride and the groom, by the time the ceremony ended, it was pouring, and so they didn't do their ceremony exit, that recessional when they walk back down the aisle. It didn't happen. So what you're seeing in this painting is the reference there's a photo in the carousel on Instagram where it's a photo of the bride and the groom. They're kind of turning around at the end of the ceremony. It's kind of like a blurry iPhone photo, candid moment. That's the only reference that I had of them.
Oh my word.
And then I had to combine that reference with, I took a few more of her at the reception, but she had changed her dress into a reception dress. She was, they had been rained on. So, it wasn't like a photographic quality reference photo. And I had to combine those references with my knowledge of the human form and kind of pose a little and get a feel for, what a stride would look like. And then I created that pose and painted the portrait to the best of my ability, and then finished it by the end of the night. So what you're seeing, I didn't touch up anything in the studio. I did that by the end of the night, which I still to this day, I'm glad you pulled that one up because that one I'm very, very proud of.
Now
Yeah,
I'm really
right?
impressed. Okay, so I'm dying to know. So we
Yeah.
unfortunately here in the Instagram post we can see a bit of the process, but what are some of those things that speed you up?
Oh, great question. So when an artist is struggling with speed, or they're taking like months or weeks to work on a painting, typically a crutch for me is when I'm sitting, I kind of like hunch over. I tend to settle into a posture that is like really getting tied in on the detail. I'll hold the brush closer to the bristles, and I kind of get a little bit tighter and more controlled, and that slows me down. And immediately, and when I'm painting live and I'm trying to get into the detail and I recognize that like my back's kind of cramping up and my hands cramping up, I realize immediately, whoa, snap out of it, step
Mm.
back. That's going to slow you down. You know this. Like,
A quick pause. Pause right there.
sure.
Hang on. Now that right there, what you just said, that for me, a light bulb just went off in my mind. Ding, this is exactly what I'm doing, Stephanie. This is exactly why I get bogged down in detail, is
Mm,
because often I'm sitting down to work. And as soon as you said that, I even felt my back just then going because
mm.
I get in that hunched over position. I'm choking the brush. I'm right up there on the ferrule.
Mhm.
And it's like, and then because I fuss at my students for doing this, and here I am doing the same dang thing. So standing up has actually loosened you up and sped you up.
100%. In fact, I didn't build it, but I had my brother-in-law build this roller table. I wish I could show you a picture. It's so simple. It's just 2 by 4 pieces of wood, but it's like standing height and it's on caster wheels. And so I can push it. It's shallow, so it's the width of it's the depth, I'm sorry, of my glass palette.
Hmm.
And I can push it right up to my H-frame easel, and I can move this around and stand up and it just I've kind of created a space here in the studio. But when I paint live, I have a Julienne style French box easel. So
Hmm.
there's a little drawer that pulls out, and I put the palette down there and my solution cup and my brushes and all that. And so it's really a good distance for me to stand and then hold. I switched all of my brushes to the long handle brushes. I think I may have some teeny tiny detail brushes
Hmm.
for like eyelashes, or the
For
corners of the
sure.
mouth, like the tiny,
Yeah.
because you have to understand these portraits are like the size of a quarter. Even the one on that painting with the size of the canvas, the portrait itself was probably maybe an inch and a half
So,
across,
so
or
it's really a
tall.
landscape. It's a landscape
Very
that you're
yes.
painting.
It's a landscape,
Yeah.
and this one in particular is a beautiful outdoor, garden landscape,
Oh,
and
it's
so there is
gorgeous.
an
Yeah.
element of distance, and then you've got the house and
Hmm.
the estate in the background. But usually, if it's an indoor setting, you're within a space. So you're not necessarily trying to observe and frame in a large space like a landscape, but you're given like a box. There's walls, there's a ceiling, there's floor. And so you're trying to create this idea of being within a space, what with portraits, an event kind of happening in front of you, with lighting, direct lighting, and then shadows happening, and then the lights changing. Like, there's so many elements that are outside of your control, and so many decisions that you have to make and then execute throughout the evening as the lighting changes. These are all ways in which this job is so tough. But yeah, like standing up, holding the brush as an extension of your hand, that's always a great trick. Even for the tight detail things, I tend to paint hands better if I step back and see it as form. Um, Use bigger brushes to begin, block in, and then
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
fill in with detail instead of diving right in with leaves and branches. Paint the form and the value, get the value down first. Um, Plan the composition better. Like I have a little sketchbook, and then I also, once I kind of get the composition down in the sketchbook, I repeat that on the canvas, and then I get a better sense of the whole puzzle of everything.
Oh,
And
it's
then I use
amazing.
oils, and so you're able to save a lot of time when you know what's going to go on in the foreground. You're not wasting time with whatever would be behind that. You just
Hmm.
execute what's in the foreground first. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. So, do you do studio work apart from your kind of your live wedding paintings? Do you do work for you and for your clients that is like commission based or other subjects?
I do, and that's based on the schedule of the year.
Hmm.
I have children, and I have had in the past 10 years, I've had 3 children. So I've gone through, like, pregnancy and postpartum terms, and so looking back at my career, there have been seasons where I was accepting commissions. A lot of the commissions I receive are portraits. They're related to people and families because they see the weddings and they say, "Oh, I wish I would have had that," or um, "Could you do a family portrait instead? Because our wedding was great, but it's over and we have kids now, and we'd love that." A lot of memorial portraits. People will send me photos of their, like a woman will send me a photo of her parents who have passed away with
Mm-hmm.
her children, and then combining those, making a composite that feels natural. That's a challenge. A painting that I do frequently, a couple of times a year, is the moment where a father is walking his daughter down the aisle, but the bride is getting married. Like, so her wedding hasn't happened yet. They're planning the wedding, but her father passed away a long time ago. So usually it's a
Wow.
gift for the bride.
Yeah.
So they'll send me old photos of the dad, and they'll send me some detail shots of the gown. And
Oh,
I have
wow.
to kind of make this moment happen. And
Yeah.
then, and they give that to him on the wedding day. And so I mean, that's just meaningful. Like,
Yeah.
there's no landscape or floral or still life or something that maybe I'm inspired to paint. There's nothing that has fulfilled me as much as giving somebody that moment.
So this is interesting to me because, on one hand, you want to maintain some sort of authenticity and artistic integrity, maintaining your own voice and really going after your own interests. But on the other hand, what I'm hearing just in your voice as you're talking about this is a genuine care and compassion and love for your clients.
Mm.
That is something that's quite rare. So you're really fully invested in this, and like this is it's almost like your God-given role in a way, isn't it?
I feel that way. And there is an element of the artist in me that
Hmm.
needs to be challenged and needs to be
Right.
nurtured. I can't just paint studio portraits, for example. I
Mhm.
have one reference. I have an email conversation back and forth. Maybe I'll hop on the phone and clarify a few details. But it's a very simple exchange. Whereas the weddings, or even the more meaningful commissions, there's usually a challenge element to it. It's not
Mhm.
as simple as a single photo. It's not something a photographer can capture. And so just doing the best that I can with the paint in front of me and a blank canvas, and then these references, getting the lighting and the tonal quality to feel like, oh, it's two people in the same space as opposed to two people from different references.
Mhm.
That's a really fun chat. That kind of fills my cup. And then
Mhm.
every now and then, if I need, if I feel like on a whim, I need to create an original collection, or I love to paint in plein air, and that usually scratches the itch. Like, I could just go out and paint something that is not commissioned, it's not necessarily for sale, and then I get to kind of flex some muscles, and play with paint. Like, I can do that if I want. But if I'm going to spend my time doing something, then yeah, I really connect with people in this way, and with this service.
Wow. Yeah, that is, so it really is finding the yeah, that connection. That's so inspiring to hear, Stephanie. That's so inspiring to hear. Well, I really hope you're enjoying this episode of the Creative Endeavor so far. Just a quick minute to tell you about this episode's sponsor, yours truly. That's right, I'm sponsoring this episode. Hey, look, you love making art, right? But turning it into a career, that's the part that is really difficult to find solid teaching online. You end up piecing things together from random videos, trial and error, hoping that something sticks. I get it. It's exhausting. I created Tish Academy to change that. This is where serious artists go to learn not just how to make great work, but how to build a sustainable, thriving art business around it. You'll get the full picture: creative process, strategy, mindset, and real examples that actually work. And if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, there is a full video version of this podcast available on the Academy. It's exclusively available at tish.academy. So if you're ready to level up, check out the Academy. This is where your next chapter starts, where you can really take your art to the next level. I'll see you there at Tish Academy. That's tish.academy, and that link is in the description down below. Let's get right back into this episode with Stephanie Gaffney. I find that again, when we first jumped into this conversation, I really wanted to hit you up and talk to you about the art business.
Mm.
How is business going for you? How's this been? You mentioned just before that you had a production team. Tell me
Mhm.
about that, and how have you found this has grown for you? And you know, uh, in terms of you developing, progressing, and growing, how is it kind of facilitating that growth and managing that as an artist?
That has been kind of the question for every year. So I've been doing this. I've been an independent artist for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've approached a fork in the road many times. I can do this or I can do this. I could pursue being known for original work or this particular style or continue doing custom work. And, what are you going to do? How do you enjoy spending your time? What's the most um, efficient and profitable use of your time? And then what is that ikigai? Have you heard of the term ikigai? It's a Japanese term. It's kind of
Right.
like a Venn
Yes.
diagram.
Yes, I have.
hmm
Yes, I have. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Talk to me about it. Let's bring it in here.
Sure, it is. It's this idea of it's a Venn diagram basically, and it's an idea of the sweet spot between what you're good at, what other people want, and let's see what you're good at, what other people want, and what you can make money on, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you're good at something and it seems like it could be a profitable idea, but nobody's wanting it or asking for it, then maybe it's not the most effective use of your time at this time. Or if people want it and you can make a lot of money doing it, but you don't love it or you're not good
Mm-hmm.
at it,
Mm-hmm.
then that's kind of a crutch. And so I've been trying to find that sweet spot in the different chapters of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so what business looks like today, if you go to my Instagram, I'm a live wedding painter. It's kind of a niche. I've
Mm-hmm.
I've become this type of artist. I can do many other things. I love pet portraits. Oh my gosh, they're so fun. I could
Mm-hmm.
whip them out. That's again a form of connection between me and a client.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fulfilling for me, but the weddings, very meaningful, very challenging. It's a challenging job. And then not
Mm-hmm.
only doing the work, but the business of it, marketing and serving people in that particular chapter of their life.
Mm-hmm.
They're very emotionally driven. People who are planning a wedding, they'll spend money on things that you and I wouldn't spend money on because it's not a priority. We're not emotionally connected to needing the biggest cake. It's a time in their life when they're very emotionally connected to decision making,
Yeah.
and then communicating with them, being professional in the wedding industry, is a different level than just any conversation with a customer.
Mm.
And I've kind of gotten good at it. I've had years of practice. I do actually paint at weddings still, but I teach other artists how to do this as well. So I was
Ah.
answering questions for years. Just people would DM me on Instagram or they would email me, "Hey, would you mind telling me, like, how do you paint faces so small so fast?" And what, like, one-off questions. And I was
Mhm.
always very transparent with my answers and like quick. I would send like a voice message. "Oh, just do this. Just do it like this." And then the same questions over and over again. And then it would be a question about business and I would look at their Instagram or their portfolio and think, this is where you need to work. Don't worry about that. Just,
Mm.
get paid for the job and then practice and then improve the painting technique, or vice versa. They would ask me a question about faces or the painting. And I'm like, yeah, but you have no website, you have no presence. And so maybe you're not going to maybe book the clients that you want. You're wanting like a luxury bride. Well, a luxury bride needs some credibility, before they
Mhm.
they spend a lot of money. So
Mhm.
I developed this online course, and I wish I could serve more artists, but it's a very specific, very niche industry. And so this is who I serve, and I give all of my knowledge. We open the course for enrollment once a year, and it's a guided course, and so we're currently going through it, and we have
Hmm.
live critiques, we have live guest interviews, we have live Q&A. It's very I'm very invested in it whenever we go through the course.
Amazing.
And then I was really fulfilled with the live element of
Hmm.
teaching. And so the podcast, I never wanted to start a podcast. I'm a painter. I just want to paint. That's why I haven't
I can
started a
relate.
YouTube video. Really? Like, how do you do it all? I wanted to ask you, are there times when you just want to turn off all the cameras and just like be in the process and not feel the pressure to
Stephanie,
record or create
Steph,
content?
every single day. Like, so-
Literally. And it's
yeah.
so generous. Like, don't get me wrong, it's so generous because there are artists who are holed up in their studios feeling so lonely and
Mm,
feeling they're just thirsty for inspiration and
yeah.
thirsty for a mentor. And
Mm,
people like you with the free content, it's so generous. And you mentioned earlier that, me working on these really memorable and meaningful commissions is like a
mm,
calling, and
mm.
that's my life's work. Like, do you feel like this is your life's work
Well,
to share and to show?
well, yeah, absolutely, very much so. But I think, and just on the podcast, like every time I think about giving it up or pivoting or going into
Mhm,
something else, I'll get a message from somebody or an email, and they'll just be like, "By the way, this really." I had one that was so moving. This guy was saying, "Look, the podcast actually was enough of a distraction to help me get through a hard time in my life."
oh,
Or somebody else will
yeah,
say that gave me the permission to jump out and do this again. Other people were like, I haven't painted in 35 years. I've listened to your stuff. I watched a few videos, and now I went out and bought all new art materials. So every time I think about hanging it up and just focusing on me,
mhm,
I kind of think, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm ready to hang it up. I've done enough, and I'll get a message where I'll get that feedback that's like, no, there's something here. I have to keep going. I
yeah,
and I do enjoy it though, because I find, and I've said this in the podcast before, like I'm learning more than anybody, and anytime I kind of lose sight of that, and then I'm talking to somebody like you, you've given me something to think about already today, and something that I can plug into my own journey. That's the whole point of this thing. But I do think, regardless of where you're at in this, I do think it is important to focus some part of this on that sense of purpose. And at least if it feels good to you to be doing something, eh,
mhm,
lean into that. Lean into that. And I think a lot of people just find art in general to be that. But let me throw it back to you because
mhm,
I'm really fascinated with the whole teaching side of things, and this has been a really interesting, you know, intersection between business and the creation of art because I get so many questions like you on the business side of things that I kind of want to know. I'm starting to see some patterns out there whenever I'm dealing with people one on one. I'm starting to see some patterns out there. But let me ask you, what do you think is missing from most people's art business? What is it? What is it that you think that people could do a better job on? Are there any trends or patterns? I mean, you mentioned something there about websites. You also mentioned quality as well. But what are some of the
mhm.
things where you think artists might be dropping the ball, and maybe some ways that they could improve?
Wow, what a broad question too, because artists in general, I think the artists who are seeing, I'm observing artists that
Mhm.
look like they've got it under control completely, those are the artists who have considered the client experience, the customer experience.
Mhm.
um, I think that that's really important. It's important in my industry, but if you're selling a painting, yes, you want to be authentic in the creation process, and yes, you want to be authentic in journaling and then sharing, how the painting itself is important to you, how it's meaningful to you, because when you share that invites connectivity with other people, and then artists, art collectors connect with that, whether it's that one piece, that one story, or you as an artist and your story, where you're from, where you live, things that are inspiring. People love to connect. And so when you're selling original art, I feel like you have to bear all. You have to invite your audience in on that journey with you and invite them to connect with you or the art or the collection. It's challenging, it's vulnerable, but when you're working with a, a customer on a custom base, like if you've been commissioned to do something, the connection is there in a way. It's almost easier. I don't know. I'm trying in a very
Mm,
long-winded way. I'm trying to say I wish more artists were open and embracing of the idea of service-based art.
mm,
You can create original art because that's what you want to paint, because you toiled away at a different job for 30 or 40 years and you
mm-hmm,
just want to paint, and this whole time you've just wanted to paint, or you've wanted to create a career that allowed you to just paint. But
mm-hmm,
now you're struggling to sell, or you're struggling to market, or you're struggling to find that connection because you've been focused on yourself for so
mm,
long.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you can continue on that journey while also inviting others to participate with you as an artist. And it's like, okay, well, what are you passionate about? Here's what I'm good at. Here's
Mm.
what I enjoy. Here, let me show you who I am as an artist. But what can we work on together?
So,
And I think more artists
mm,
would find more financial stability, I believe,
mm.
if they were um made more space for service-based art.
That's so interesting. Okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but the thing is, okay, what I think you're highlighting here is that real difference between product and service, right?
Mhm.
We often get too obsessed with art as a product, and that's where we find ourselves in this cul-de-sac in a way, and we've got this body of work, we've got a product, and we're trying to push ourselves almost onto the market. But if you are doing something for someone else, i.e., helping them solve a problem, and that's something that you're doing with your service-based art business, is painting live at weddings. You're actually fulfilling so many functions there and solving so many problems in this one thing. Like you're providing entertainment. You know, what are
Mhm.
we gonna have that's gonna be really entertaining and engaging for our guests? What's something that we have as a keepsake? You know, that we can
Yeah.
pass on from generation to generation. I mean, goodness me, it just ticks so many boxes. What a wonderful idea. So I have found this as well, where I've tried to do the brain flippy thing and get out of product headspace and into service headspace and go, well, how can my art actually solve a problem? How can it be of service? I want to throw a name into the mix. And I wonder if you've heard of him, but his name's Donald Miller, and he wrote a book called Building a Story Brand. Have you heard of that, Stephanie?
Ooh, it is sounding familiar. I haven't read the book, but I will
Okay.
now.
So, because I'm really interested in business, right? And I might have talked about this in a podcast before, but I'm interested in like business and the psychology of business and the mindset
Mhm.
of what it takes to create a business and how to really connect and what is it we're trying to do. And it's more than just making money. If it's about that, forget it. Like you've got to be there's got to be
Mhm.
more in it for you than that. And Donald Miller in his book Building a Story Brand, it was a paradigm shift for me, because what he said was often what happens is, you take Joseph Campbell's hero's journey as a story arc, right?
Yeah.
And you have the hero who's not much in the beginning, and he encounters a problem, a crisis or something, and he's called to action, and he's set off on this adventure or whatever. But along the way, he doesn't have what it takes, or she doesn't have what it takes to do what they need to do to claim the prize, to fulfill the mission, to overcome the challenge. And so who enters into the scene but a guide? And this guide basically leads them along, gives them the crystal, the map, the secret knowledge, or the training, or the, you know, cue the montage here of the trainee in Rocky's Corner, or Yoda giving Luke Skywalker all the instruction he needs, and the whatever that was, but you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
this is the hero's journey. So enter the guide, and then what ends up happening is ultimately the hero triumphs, but it wouldn't have happened without the guide. And I've asked a few people this, and kind of teasing a little bit. So, because since read his book, I'm an expert now, of course. And so I was saying to these different people, like, who's the hero in the business? And people are like, well, I am. It's like, no, that's the thing. And I was getting it wrong for
Yeah.
so long. You're not the hero. You're the guide. And as soon as you get that shift in perspective, now suddenly it made it easier for me to think about art as a service, because I'm stepping in as a guide, helping somebody else, rather than making it all about me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So yeah, if you haven't
definitely.
checked out that book, I highly recommend it. I think it'll be, yeah, right up your alley, because
It's a very good promotion. I'm gonna read it now.
well, I didn't get paid to say it, but anything that I found that has made a huge difference to me, I'm going to pass along, because it's just
Yeah.
it was a paradigm shift for me, I can tell you. But what so your coaching program, like, and again, I didn't
Mhm.
know we were going to talk about this. And to anybody listening, there's no kickback. I'm not getting anything from Stephanie's course, but I'm really excited about the fact that you are teaching this stuff. So, have you found that it's just by teaching and having to formulate lessons that this is enhanced and furthered your learning and development as a business person as well?
100%. It has, because I am not like formally trained as an artist. I was a graphic design major. I took one painting
Cool.
class, and I painted with oils for one semester and then switched to acrylics for honestly faster turnaround.
Hmm.
And I worked with acrylics for 9 years and then switched back to oils. And I'll never go back. I broke it. I've broken up with acrylics, and
Good.
oils are my true love now.
Glad to hear it.
Um, but let me think. I just started deep diving in oils and why I love oil so much. No, because like you said, you learn as you teach. If you want
Hmm.
to, if you want to have a deeper understanding of something, teach it to someone else. And
Right.
so, 100%, I've learned more about my understanding of value and color and composition and the decisions that we make and why. Whenever you have to explain to someone else how they could improve. Group critiques they were fun and inspiring and helpful when I was a design student and then a designer for a year and a half. But now, since I've been an artist, for the first 5 years in my business, I was missing that. I didn't have any real artist friends. And the
Mm.
ones that I had, we didn't really get too deep, and we would just be like, "Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's a great job. Good luck. I hope you sell
Mhm.
it." It was very kind of surface level. And then after COVID, it was it was like, I need help. Is anyone else struggling with existing in the art world, or making a living, or like business in general? We got a lot deeper after that experience. And so, and then I created the course in 2023. And yeah, it has helped me tremendously as an artist. It's also helped me in the industry as a whole, because what happened was, I started live painting in 2015. At that time, there were a handful of other artists in the country, in the United States, that I found on Google who were
Mhm.
doing this.
Mhm.
And it was an add-on to what they were doing. They weren't branding themselves as that. It was just, hey, I can do this. And so I entered this scene, and but I needed to do a lot of educating. And so, I'm one of I don't want to say the first, but I am one of the first people that were doing live wedding painting in the country.
You're top on Google
And
as well,
I,
by the way. You're
my
up there a
that
lot.
is huge thanks to my SEO manager. Because
Way to
I've
go.
also learned that I'm a good painter, but I am terrible at search engine optimization. And so, we that's been an ongoing progress process since 2018. So that's another piece of advice I have for people. Have your like Optimize your website well, and you will show up.
Mhm.
So, I learned a lot from other professionals in industries that I am not an expert. So, yeah, but I've learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to talk about art. Um, I've also seen. an improvement in the industry as a whole. When other artists encourage, when artists encourage other artists on a way to improve, that whether it's their process or their contract or their business process, their communication or their paintings, then the entire industry improves. There was a time where this industry was more competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. People were kind of afraid you would steal their business, afraid
Mm.
you would steal their jobs. And there's still a few people who feel that way, I think. But the majority of artists that are coming into the space recognize where they are in their development, their technical development, and they're willing to learn and accept critique and
Mm-hmm.
accept feedback to improve, to produce a better style, because they
Mm-hmm.
are putting the client first.
Mm-hmm.
They want to blow their clients' minds. They want to create the best work ever, even early in their career. And I did the same thing. I wish I would have had a guide 8 years ago, and but I didn't, and I had to figure it all out on my own.
Mm.
There were no online resources. I couldn't. All of the resources I got in terms of the profession of working, running a small business in the wedding industry, came from photographers. The contract template, the base of my contract, I built off of a photographer's
Mm-hmm.
contract, because there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of artistic release and abstract concept that had to be verbalized in a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I don't know. I forgot your question, but I've learned a lot, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that as a whole, the industry it has improved since I started, and is doing very well, in terms of helping each other and general sense of community. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's an interesting thing that, though, that you mentioned about the competition, because it's good to hear that there's that support there
Mhm.
amongst fellow live wedding painters. I'm a huge believer that the world is plenty big enough, and the internet is a
Mm,
very big place, and there's
yeah.
room for everybody. This idea of holding on to what's yours, I've really had to question over the years. I used to be like that, but what is it that I have that's truly mine? Did I pioneer representational oil painting? Well, no.
Mhm.
Every lesson that I've learned, I either read somewhere or was taught by somebody, or I was just playing with stuff in the studio that many others have played with, and probably have discovered other things that I could benefit from potentially. So I learned, fortunately, early on to turn loose of these things and not take credit or ownership for things that I did not do. Um, and as such, this idea, this notion of competition, it always, it's like this flow that comes through. And I think anytime you hold on to something and you're worried, it sounds so new agey, and I cringe saying this, but if you hold on to those things, you stop that flow in a way, and that
Mhm.
creativity is supposed to flow through you. And so
Yeah.
if you allow it by passing it on, giving it away, it actually it is more of a benefit to you than holding on so tight.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it also positions you in a place of generosity,
Mm-hmm.
and it in my experience, I've only had one or two people ever kind of take my generosity and take advantage of that, and run with it and make it their own idea, and
Mm.
just whatever. And you can't control what people are going to do,
That'll
but
happen. Yeah.
generally, when you're generous and you share that generosity in a public space, you're positioning yourself kind of as an expert, and so people pay attention, and then people want to learn from you, and then that it's kind of it comes back around. It comes
Mm-hmm.
back around.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it comes that way, like in your industry. If you're trying to, you as an educator are going to have a higher quality reputation, I believe, for collectors, because not only is this guy a great painter, but people know who he is because of his generosity. They know who he is because of what he's putting out there for other artists. He's not afraid to share his information and
Mm-hmm.
his techniques or his trade secret. Like, he's confident in what he's doing, and he's generous in that way. Like, this guy is the real deal. He knows what he's doing. So for a collector, I feel like they can connect with you on that level, and they're like, "Oh, we have one of his pieces. He's important. That I've booked clients who hire me because I had my wedding published in a my painting published in a magazine, or because they heard my podcast, or because because they saw me at this or that, and it's just, oh, she's important, like she's the best, and it's just a perceived kind of thing, but
Well, you
yeah,
might be.
generosity definitely pays off.
You might be. I
Well,
mean, I'm looking at the people that you've published with. We got HGTV. We got Inside New Orleans. We got Rocky Mountain Bride, People Magazine. We got
mhm,
Arkansas Bride Guide. You've got like all of these. Okay, let's take a minute. Let me set this up as a proper question, because you have
sure,
got a beautiful website, and I hope you don't mind, Stephanie. We could do a part two at some time where we really do a bit of a deeper dive into the
let's
art. But
do it.
I'm just really eaten up by the quality of your business, your vision, your mission here, and how you present yourself online is excellent.
Which website are you on?
There's more than one. I'm at
There's 3.
stephaniegaffney.com. Get out of town. There's three. Okay.
There's 3. So Stephanie Gaffney is kind of my coaching website. That's me as a coach and a mentor and the podcast host and all that. But if you go to my business,
Mm-hmm.
is Torgrosa Fine Art. It's the Instagram handle
Ah,
.com.
okay, okay.
But this is my,
Let's
of course I
copy a
didn't
link.
do an actual web link. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're
Um,
fine. Let's do it.
and then
Let's
this
go
one
here.
is the print. If you want to see my original work, so originals, I'm not well known for my originals. I create originals because they are a fun break from me, and then I sell prints. And I have
Right.
this very simple print shop, and then I have an Etsy store too. And the prints are kind of a passive. There's a process, and I have an employee that helps me, but it's more passive,
Hmm.
selling prints, and so that's kind of side. But the Torgrosa Fine Art, that's my work. That's the
Beautiful.
weddings. And then Stephanie
Beautiful.
Gaffney. Thank you.
Okay, so you have employees. So this is going pretty well. You've hired people. Like you are you're an operation now.
I'm a business lady.
You're a business lady. Okay, who do you employ and what are they doing for you?
Sure. So I have, let's see, I've gone through a couple of employees, and typically it's somebody who can come to my home and help me in the space, help me like finish paintings, whether it's varnishing, wiring, packaging. That's things that are very time consuming, and my time is better spent painting or communicating with clients or whatever. And I mentioned earlier, I'm a mother and I have a growing family, and I do have childcare, so my kids are out of the house most days, but they like to get sick and be home. And when they're home, I can't do anything. And so, and then I travel for weddings on the weekends, and I do travel. I travel out of the country occasionally, not as often as I would like, although that's exhausting. So maybe that's enough. But out of the state, I'm out of the state a couple of times a month. But yeah, I've got the wedding painting business. I've got a virtual assistant who helps me with inquiries and kind of helps me stick to my boundaries, because since my priority is serving people, I will accept a job any day, no matter whether it's a holiday or inconvenient. And so it's helpful to have somebody kind of funnel and manage my inquiries and my calendar. So that's helpful. And she helps with email communication with my podcast and with my students. And it's a lot of there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a couple different businesses. So I'm a live wedding painter, but now I teach artists how to be live wedding painters
Mhm.
by way of an online course and mentorship. So I do have people helping me run the community. I've got a community manager working remotely. She works from home in Denver,
Mhm.
and then I've got a virtual assistant. I've got somebody to come in occasionally and help me package paintings, and then package prints for my fine art print shop. I have a production team because I'm an artist and I can talk, but I cannot edit videos. And I knew when I started the podcast, I
Mm.
wanted to share, I wanted to be generous, I wanted to invite other people to to use my platform to share their stories and their advice for the world. But I did not want to learn how to edit videos. I've tried. I can't take on another thing. So I have a production team for the podcast. Um, let's see. I have an SEO manager. And so I mentioned, you mentioned the website is doing well on Google. This is thanks in great part to my friend Stephanie Morris. She is located in South Carolina. So I've got a lot of people all over the place, and they're all experts in what they do. And so at the beginning, I was doing everything myself. I actually designed my websites because I was a graphic designer, and I have fun with it. And so that's kind of a fun little project that I dabble away at, whenever we update it and stuff like that. So, but I do firmly believe in outsourcing when you can to people who are like pros at something you are not. I have,
It's a scary step.
it is when you're first getting started, you got no money. You got to do everything yourself, and you got to,
Yeah.
you're small, but it's good to stay small. And I tell my students, like, it's okay. You're not, honestly, you're not like dealing with that many clients. You're not dealing with that much income, and like it's okay to do things at your own pace, DIY, and then implement little change after little change. I went through a couple revisions of my website, and then I designed it myself, and there was a glitch. And so I asked for help online, and somebody said, well, I'm an expert at Show It, which is the platform that I use for my websites. And I mean, it started out as a small fix, and then now she's on retainer. I pay her monthly to be on retainer to help me with all kinds of things. So my team has grown and shrunk and grown and shrunk, and now we've got a good solid group of people who are very good at what they do. Hey, and me.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, I'm looking forward to doing a deep dive into your podcast as well. It's something that I love consuming audio type material while I'm working away in the studio. And what we'll do is we'll include links to all your stuff in the show notes for the people that are listening to this episode. Um, Stephanie, is there any other direction that we can turn here in this podcast? I'll open it to you. I maybe I could ask you this. Actually, I'm going to throw you a curveball now. This is
Oh
something that
gosh.
just popped into my head. Um, so a friend and a mentor of mine just he had me on his podcast, and I'll when that comes out, I'll let people know. But he asked me, um, what's one thing that people might not know about you that you could mention in the podcast? And
Oh
he
god.
threw that to me, and I thought that was a very interesting question. I've never been asked that before. What a weird question. But I'm going to ask you that as well. What's one thing about you as an artist, as a business person, as a podcast host, as I can see here, a YouTuber, because you're on YouTube.
It's on
So
YouTube.
so so what's one thing that people might not know about you?
Oh my gosh. I'm so curious to know what you told him. I can't wait for that episode to come out.
I'm not mentioning it now.
Oh, golly, what something that people don't know about me that I want to mention on your podcast?
Go on.
Oh, I don't know. There's so many direct. Let me think. Let me think.
What do you? I mean, do you? So let me. Okay, maybe that's a silly question. Ignore that.
It's not a silly question. It's just very broad. Do I want to share like an insecurity, or do I want to share like a scar, or,
Oh wow,
do I want to
deep.
brag? Like what's the best
Give me a
job I've,
brag. Give me a brag. Give me a brag.
um,
Let's do it.
okay. I just befriended the lieutenant governor of the state of Louisiana, and he's a good friend with my husband's and his dad. And we are pursuing a collaboration with one of the state museums where I do this big uh, commission installation and about Mardi Gras, and it's kind of a cultural thing down here in Louisiana. And so that's something it hasn't happened yet, but I'm like really excited about it. And anytime somebody approaches me for a collaboration where we can get really creative, and it's just an honor that anybody wants to work with me. I feel that way with brides and clients. It's like, oh my gosh, you want to work with me? I'll knock it out the park. Like, I am a people person. So
I can
that's
tell.
kind of exciting. I'm on this podcast with you. I've been aware of you and your work and your podcast for a long time, but you know, it's I'm not going to brag on you too much, but I'm honored to be here. Um, I don't know, man.
That's a really good one, though.
Um,
That's a really good one. I think, isn't it wonderful to have had those wins and to really celebrate those wins? I find that
mm-hmm,
so much of my art journey has been a connection game. It's and whenever you're meeting a client for the first time and particularly some higher profile, bigger names as well,
mm-hmm,
they at the end of the day also they are just people, but they can really open doors for you. I think I can clearly see just from this conversation that we've had, and I hope we have many more, that you've got a magnetism to you, and so it's a little wonder for me that people are attracted to that and want to be part of your
mm-hmm.
business and your artistic journey. So this is really it's really a wonderful thing. It's a really wonderful thing,
Thank you.
and so just
Yeah.
staying there and continuing to work with that. That's awesome. I think Stephanie, gone are the days where artists just want to hide away in their studios. I mean, there are a lot of people that are doing that, but I encourage them to get out, get their easel, get out there, mix it up with people, and start building those personal connections. And
Yeah.
you've built a wonderful business here and a great personal brand that I can see across your social media, your website. You present yourself very well. I was going to ask you about the website in particular,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the one that is showcasing your services as a live wedding painter and then as a
Mm-hmm.
teacher of this. So that being a little bit of a pivot here, but that being the forefront of your business where you interface with potential clients and potential students, like tell me what platform are you running that on, and give maybe a little bit about some of the stuff that you've learned about how to present yourself well online.
Absolutely. I think something missing in my first websites, because I've gone through
Hmm.
8 websites now,
Hmm.
and I've learned a lot of lessons and kind of started from scratch many times, is that we think more about, "Oh, people just want to see the art."
Hmm.
People but portfolio. I just need a portfolio site, and then I need a place for them to buy it. It needs to be e-commerce friendly. And I think that an element of the website as a tool that, people I see are not utilizing better is the content, the, ability to write content and optimize it for search so that you show up, because people use Google, they use it like the search engine it's meant to be, and so they type in questions, and with the intelligence these days, they're suggesting Google suggests answers or articles or pages where the answer is written. And so if it doesn't matter what you sell, it doesn't matter what your art is or what your craft is, you can be found on Google by using it better as the tool it was meant to be instead of just a gallery site. Does that make sense? So like the stories you
Absolutely,
tell,
absolutely.
the tone with which you write the site. Yes, you should put your thesis. Yes, you should put your mission statement, and you should put your story and put your accolades and put your CV and put you. Yes, that's where it should live as well, because people are looking for that as well. But answer people's questions and then start the break the ice with them on your website, on your social media. Start telling stories, start forming those connections. That's what I've tried to do. And I'm not the best at it. My SEO manager and I have been talking for years about me starting a blog. And I'm like, I do enough. I can, the blog would be it's long form content.
Not one
I
more thing.
and I know she's right. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
it would show up better. I would be able to serve people better. It
Hmm.
would make smaller forms of content like social media posts and ideas like that, topic ideas for the podcast. It would make that easier. But it would be beneficial in many ways.
Hmm.
And that's just one way. And but other ways, we've got many pages on the website. I have taken the time and investment to optimize the website better for search. And yeah, that's one thing that I've learned over the years, to use the website better as a tool.
Hmm. Hmm. That's yeah, that you're so right there. something that I am continuing to work on and need to work on more. It is difficult though, isn't it? I mean, it's difficult
Mhm.
juggling all the things we have to juggle. There's a lot to
It's
it.
it, it's hard enough because we're running businesses and we're supporting families and we're thinking proactively and we're putting out fires every day. Oh,
Mm,
and we have to tap into that right brain
mm,
and create. And then, those of us that teach while we create, it's juggling both. It's so much. And so when I work on the website, I heard this term from Stephen Bartlett, he's a entrepreneur in the UK and he runs the Diary of the CEO podcast.
yeah, that
Um,
guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that guy,
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
mentioned in an
He's great.
episode once, he said, I have what's called a someday shelf. And I was like, I have needed to hear this my whole life
Mm,
because I'm attracted to shiny objects, and looking at somebody's website and saying, "Oh, I need to work on my website." I'll pour a glass of wine and stay up all night working on my website that night. No. It's okay to say, "I need to work on my website. These are the things that I want to do. I'm going to put it on this someday shelf and then assign that project to September when I know it's a little slower,
mhm.
or assign it later in the year, assign it to a quarter
Yeah,
and dedicate that quarter to that project. I like to think in terms of projects.
yeah.
It's the only way I can achieve big things.
Hmm. That's a really interesting concept. Wow. The someday
Think
shelf.
about it. Yeah, think about it. Think about something you want to do, a collection or a painting,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
you've got so many irons in the fire right now that
Mm,
if you add another one,
mm.
everything will just burn down. So you really
Yeah.
have to put things on hold, but not forget about them because they're a good
Mm,
idea and they'll serve you or they'll serve someone. There's It's important. It's not just a frivolous shiny object idea that has nothing to do with your business,
that's right.
but it's like a solid idea.
Mm,
Maybe it's for me it was the podcast. I wanted to start a podcast a long time ago, but I didn't have time. And
mm.
then I made time. I put it on the calendar, and then 6 months after I put it on the calendar, I said I'm not taking commissions because I'm starting this project. So it was
Awesome.
a lower income, but it ramped up, and now we've kind of gotten into the groove. But yeah, it's a project.
Awesome.
I did think, okay, while you were talking, and I feel so silly for not mentioning it, and now I feel like I'm gonna be like, oh wait, I want to brag some more. I
Yeah,
did have a
go.
couple other really cool
Give us
commissions.
another one.
I was invited by Sharpie, which I don't know if you've heard of the little company called Sharpie.
They
Um,
make markers, right? Markers and pens.
there
I got a Sharpie right here. There you go.
I
There
don't
you go.
I don't know
Sharpie.
anybody on the planet who doesn't know or
Yeah.
have heard of Sharpie,
There you
but
go.
they did a promotional tour where they were promoting this acrylic paint marker
Hmm.
and a collection of them, like a set of them, and they took a tour bus throughout the country and they reached out and invited me to come on the bus and try out the markers and create content. And so that was really fun for me. And
Wow.
the reel like that I created went not like viral, but it did really well. And so that was a really fun collaboration. And I tried when I created it, I was thinking of my audience. I'm like, I'm a painter.
Hmm.
How am I going to make it make sense to have a promotion for a marker? And so I used and it's a paint marker. So I used the marker and layered it like I would a painting. And that reel is on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm rarely on TikTok these days, but Instagram, let's see when I did it earlier this year. That was a fun collaboration. And then
Brilliant.
it was a fun collaboration with a national brand that I'm really proud of. And then I did a collaboration a couple years ago with that utilized my skills that I was really excited about. When that TV show was running,
Hmm.
it was hosted, shown. It was on Netflix, so it was a
Hmm.
Netflix show. And Netflix did a promotional collaboration with Tanqueray Gin, and they did like a sweepstakes, like a contest where anybody could create this little video of them kind of at a tea party. I don't know, it was like a contest. They had to create a video, and the winner received a live painting in the Regency era. Like they wanted a painter to come out and create this old school type of experience where you would sit for a
Cool.
portrait.
Cool.
And I was like, "That's so funny because that's what I do for just in the wedding sphere and things like that." And so I went out and painted, the winners of this contest, and that was a fun collaboration too. But that one was
Awesome.
fun because it was a way for me to show what I do as a painter, you know?
Mm. Ah, so inspiring. I'm gonna come away from this podcast with a few new things to think about, and I hope it's been as inspiring for the people listening as it has been for me. Stephanie, I'll link to all your stuff in the show notes, but thank you so much for being on this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast. We're gonna have to do this again.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for letting me talk for an hour. Thank you for having me, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast. A huge thank you to Stephanie Gaffney for joining me. I'm going to link to all of her social media in the description down below, as well as her websites. This was a lot of fun, this conversation. It just shows you the power of building a niche. You can really thrive within this thing that you carve out for yourself. It's really amazing as well at the power and the gravitational pull, the effect you can have on others by just putting yourself out there, just getting over that fear, jumping in and doing it anyway. What an inspiring story. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you did, please leave me a rating or a review on whatever audio platform you're listening on. It makes a huge difference to the show, and please do me a huge favor and share this on your social media as well. I really need your help to get this podcast out to more and more people, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. Well, thanks so much for joining me once again. I'll see you in another episode of the Creative Endeavor.